so we're getting ready to save our dash. Now, you've already seen the close-ups of this, and you've seen how absolutely knackered this dash is. By the way, excuse the noise in the background, we're having some electrical work done. Anyhow, so this is the fuser product. This particular product right here is a rigid foam. We got a lot of the foam that's missing from this dash. We have to replace that in order for this thing to work out for us. But this right here is basically an extreme bumper repair adhesive. When it dries, it's rock hard. It sets up really fast. You've got to work quick with it. So what we've done, we'll show you in a minute, is we've laid out all the detailed areas that need some attention. And we'll show you what that's all about in a second. But for now, usually when you get something like this, the gun's fairly cheap. The product can be somewhat expensive for the really high-end stuff, okay? That's what this is. It comes with usually just some, these are called mixer sticks, so when you attach it in there, it blends the two products together. You always want to run some of it out first before you introduce it to there, because you want to make sure that they're thoroughly mixed. Okay, so anyway, that's that. So we got some paint sticks that we taped off because we don't want these sticking to the dash, because once the stuff sets up, whatever's touching it, it's going to be bonded. Put these together, we're ready to go on there. Everything's been marked, so we know exactly where we need to go, so we're not wasting time, because this stuff sets up in about 3 minutes, so you got very little time to work with it. So we're gonna get started right now. Alright, I just cleaned myself up because sanding this thing is a bit of a mess. And we're not going to go into the full-scale operations of what it takes to do that, but at least now the dash is really structurally sound. Anytime you cut something from one of these dashes, the metal framing is what's really keeping it squared up. You cut it and that framing comes out of square, it starts to get weak, and that's where you start to see a lot of the vulcanized foamed rubber start to separate over time. Yeah, it's heat related as well, but effectively if the dash is allowed to move, it exaggerates that process a little more. One thing is for certain though, this door, which I realize you can't really see that well, this door now actually shuts rather squared and close to flush. If you have a car that has a glove box door that is either difficult to close or is not in square, usually that's because the dash is starting to bend, okay? What starts that is usually when somebody does this right here. They cut in a stereo into the dash. That has a significant amount of the structural steel that gets removed, and when that's gone, it starts to flex. When it starts to flex, things start to crack. When things start to crack, they start to accelerate the deterioration process. Okay, so yes, this doesn't look pretty, but it's not supposed to. If I wanted to just smooth this out a little more, I could throw a textured material on it and it would be usable at that point, but that's not what we're doing here. We're going to modify this area once I have the actual cluster in hand. We're going to modify this so it looks a little more to the part. But other than that, this thing's ready to go to get the suede wrap on it. So the things we have to do now is we have to modify the center console a little bit more before it's ready. And both of the things get wrapped in suede, and that'll be that. So right now I'm going to go back and start anchoring in the indoor unit of the air conditioner and start routing the lines, because we're expecting our hydraulic line crimping tool soon. And when that gets here, we start running AC system and be done with everything until the motor's dropped in. We can put it in the vacuum, have the charge put in it, and have air conditioning. Okay, so we're making the new straps to hang the indoor unit on our air conditioner. The ones that come with it don't even come close. They're meant for something else. But so this is the first strap I'm making. Something you should probably keep in mind if you're doing something like this yourself. If you have to make straps to hang something under the dash, you should always put a radius on all the corners, because I can't tell you how many times you go to run wire or something and it always seems to find a way to snag on a sharp edge. So, not to mention, somebody's got their hand underneath there, you don't want them to cut themselves. So we always put a radius on it to kind of soften the edges. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in the bead roller, and I'm going to put a bead in it. The reason I'm doing that is because our unit's going to be suspended from these. And this is just 18 gauge mild steel. And if I do this, I will stiffen it up substantially by putting that simple bead in there. And that way the unit doesn't move when it's under the dash. There. Now that is much stronger simply because I put that bead right there in it. Alright? Okay, so our unit's in now. Alright? Our in-shop made straps with the bead rolls in them are in place. And again, the reason we did that was to firm up the strapping of the condenser, excuse me, the evaporator, because we don't want this thing floating around inside the car as we go down the road, getting an annoying, rub or vibration up against something. The other thing we did is we ran our, pull it out, we ran our condensation drain line. Now what I used was a super lubing product. Because the drain nipple is on the very back side of this unit and the pan's made out of plastic, I didn't want to stress that nipple trying to press this on there. So we used the super lubing product to squeeze it onto it. It works out fine. The other thing is as that super lubing starts to dry, it kind of becomes like a glue and it really seals things up quite nicely. So you notice I didn't trim any of this off yet. The reason I'm not going to do that, so now that it's evacuated out of the car, the line's not kinked, which is, something you have to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, that's perfect. I won't cut this until I'm able to anchor to the inside of the transmission tunnel. I don't want it where it's floating above the drive shaft, creating some kind of mystery drip that, the owner may never be able to figure out. So we're just going to connect it to the side of the transmission tunnel, to the inside, underneath the car, and then we'll trim off the excess then. So other than that, the only other thing we've got to do is we have to incorporate the heater control valve, which in this case is completely electronic. The heater control valve in your car is mechanical because you have a slide lever. But because we have an air conditioning system with electronic controls, there's no real way to control the water flow coming into the heater core. So it's electronically done in this case. So we have to install that. Once it's installed, it goes through the bulkhead right here, the return and the supply line. At that point, we're pretty much done with the heating side of this, other than connecting it to the front of the engine, which is yet to be installed. Next week, we should have our hydraulic line fitting tool that's going to compress all the lines for the air conditioning, and then we'll start running those as well. But for the most part, this is going along pretty well. So next thing you're going to see is us putting in the heater control valve. Alright, so put up with the noise if you can. Here's all the wires that are coming in from this unit. They're hardwired in before you even get to messing with it. So, this one right here is for the electronic water control valve, okay, which is going to go right here. As you can see, I've got my inlet and outlet for my water already set up, okay? So I got to tie this in. It goes into this. Obviously, I need to tidy up the wires once it's all said and done so nothing's hanging down. But effectively, everything about this is pretty straightforward in the sense that it can be done with a little bit of common sense. Alright, so what we have here is power supply for the motor. Right here is the electronic controls from the electronic gating, and this is for the internal motor that's in here that is controlling the fresh air and allowing the gate to close against the heater versus the gate opening on the evaporator and vice versa. So basically this is just controlling a very complicated little door that opens and closes and allows air to flow through either the heater or the air conditioner. That's all it really is. But so far, this is a piece of cake. So this connects to here, but before we do that, we're going to take some of our super lube Okay. Get it on there. I also put a vibration isolator on here. It didn't come from the manufacturer for this on that, but because this is going to be resting against this again, I'm avoiding a little annoying vibration that will inevitably happen. So this way we isolate it from making noise. There, and that is it. That's all you got to do. So the line coming out of here will loop around and connect to this. But that's it. So far it's a piece of cake. Alright, so the heater control valve is in, plugged in, excess wire zip tied, put away. The nice thing about how the bulkhead connector is fitted is you have your choice of 3 of the 4 connectors to choose to route your lines. What I'm meaning by that is that I elected to go with the 2 far side ones for the heater, and then the 2 far left side ones will be for the AC. That's a pretty nice little way of being able to run that. Obviously the biggest thing you ever want to worry about is making sure the lines aren't kinked. Here it is, nothing's kinked, it's installed. The job pack that comes with this gives you a ton of different kinds of connectors to work with, so you should have literally no problem being able to route it. Now, simply because we have an electronic heater control valve, this is where it gets complicated. This is the relay mechanisms that tie into all this for that heater control valve. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to hide that in a very inconspicuous place. But when you think about it, I got 5 pieces of ductwork that have to come off of this. I have 2 that have to go to the defrost and 3 that go to the dash. Granted, I have a ton of space now because this thing is tucked way far back, but they're underneath the cowling for the wiper assembly. And the ducting comes with this is real soft, very flexible stuff, so I shouldn't have a problem routing it. But when you add that ducting in there, it gets mighty stuffy under here in a hurry. So you kind of have to forward think about that. You have to forward think about how the wiring is going to go for the rest of the car. We're putting the wiring and the really trick ECU controller in the back of this. If you haven't seen it yet, we made a parcel tray back here. It completely stiffened up this chassis, but it also gives you plenty of good storage in the back of this because there is no back seat in this car. It's going to get wrapped in a real nice fabric, but you have the ECU back there and the engine management system for the very advanced electronics going into this engine bay. But this is effectively going to be very clean. Again, one thing about this shop compared to the other is this shop is a bit loud because it's wide open cathedral type like space, so you can hear a lot of background noise. I do the best I can to filter some of that out, but effectively, if you're going to keep watching this, you're going to hear a lot of noise in the background. And that's the end of this day.